First one is from Greta, and it's saying, can you talk a bit about the most recent MemberMouse release? I'm not in the EU. Do I need it? Will it only be available for manual upgrade? Okay, so Greta, just for everybody's benefit, she's referring to MemberMouse 2.3.0, which came out last week. And the primary reason for this release was to release compliance mechanisms for SCA, 3D secure checkout, etc. So mainly, this release was targeted at people in the EU who are affected by this new legislation, the deadline of which was September 14th, 2019. So if you're not in the EU, you don't need it. However, as part of upgrading the aspects of MemberMouse that needed to be upgraded to be in compliance with this legislation, there were actually some other updates done that were just generally beneficial to all MemberMouse customers with regards to PCI compliance. So PCI compliance is a somewhat complicated thing, and I'm definitely no expert on it. But if you have, and PCI compliance has to do with the amount of exposure you have when you're collecting credit cards or payment online, and so this is something that's regulated, and it's something that when you're working with payment providers like Stripe, Braintree, they will be keeping a close eye on this because based on your level of exposure and risk to them, that's going to mean that they may impose some restrictions on you, or they may charge fees, or they may raise your rates. So it's something that you want to be mindful of, that you want to have the most secure tools available to you on your checkout forms when you're collecting credit cards online, so that you can be in compliance with them and therefore not run into any potential issues with the payment providers. This has to do with collecting sensitive information, how this information is collected, if it's stored or not, how securely it's transmitted between your server and the payment provider, stuff like this. So there's some terminology that's used in PCI compliance. Like if you look at, there's a questionnaire, and usually there are different levels of PCI compliance. I think there's like 10 levels. The lower you are in the levels, the more rigorous that and costly it will be for you to maintain actually being able to be in business and not be shut down by different institutions who manage these things. So SAC, SAQ, so SAC A and SAC EP, AEP are at the very top of the list. This is the most protected and secure you can be on a checkout form. And then it goes down from there, B, C, D, I believe. So the reason for this long preamble is because there's a short answer I can give about why this release is beneficial for people who just aren't in the EU. But without the understanding of that kind of background, it's not going to make sense when I say it. So basically, with the new upgrades to the Stripe integration and the Braintree integration, these now ratchet up. Like if you use these integrations with MemberMouse as of 2.3.0, your PCI level of compliance is at SAC A or SAC AEP. So it brings you to the top level of compliance and makes your checkout page as secure as it possibly can be with the industry standards. So this is one of the main benefits for everybody to upgrade to MemberMouse 2.3.0. It just gives you the most amount of security and benefits that you can get from collecting credit cards online. And of course, this is not only good just to be in compliance, but it's good for protection against fraud and other things. These what are they called? These specs are put in place and then passed along to be compliant with for the sake of security, to combat the growing levels of fraudulent activity that's going on, especially with e-commerce sites. So it's a good idea. If you're collecting credit card, if you're using PayPal and you're not collecting credit card data on your site, then yeah, 2.3.0 is, it doesn't have much stuff in it for you. I believe there are a few other kind of minor features in there, something to do with Aweber. You can look at the release notes, but basically, yeah, if you look at the release notes and you're not using any of the third-party tools that were upgraded as a part of that integration, it's not going to do anything for you, right? So if you're not using Aweber, Stripe, Braintree, and you're not in the EU, then sure, you can skip it. And then the second part of your question was, will it only be available for manual upgrade? Okay, so no, it will soon be it'll soon be available from the dashboard. So here's since I have the benefit of just being in front of a live audience, and I can give you the backstory and just be very straightforward. So a lot of people of you who know, who have been with us for a while, when we do our release our upgrades, it basically shows up in the WordPress dashboard. You click a button and it's pretty straightforward for all that to happen. The reason that things are a little different with this release is because the file size of the zip file of the plugin itself, because of the addition of the new Stripe libraries and the Braintree libraries that are part of this release, it put the size of the file over 2 megabytes. It's, I think, at like 2.2 megabytes. But that created an unexpected situation for us, because the deal is that the default for web hosting providers, they have something called a max file upload size, and that default usually is 2 megabytes. So if you try and upload a file that's larger than 2 megabytes, then it will give you an error, and you'll have to go into your PHP ini file and update the max size, or there's a plugin which we recommend people use in WordPress where you can install it and it'll allow you to upload files larger than 2.2 megabytes. So there was just a little bit, and the thing is, we were running up close to that deadline. So we made the call, like, it's more important that we just get this out, put it in the hands of the people who need it to be in compliance in the EU. And we'll work on figuring out this unexpected file size increase thing separately. So the result of that was that when we released it, the directive was, look, this is only available for manual upgrade. And the reason that is because we weren't sure what the behavior would be if we allowed for upgrades to happen through the dashboard and the max file size limit error happened. We weren't sure how that would be displayed to the user, how that would be communicated to the user, and how confusing that would be. And we didn't want to introduce a situation where somebody clicked that and then they got into a place where they were stuck and stressed. Obviously, people can always email our support. We would help out and clear it up right away. But the critical thing is, like, when that happens, it can be, it can be very stressful. My site's down right now. What do I do? And we just didn't want to put people through that because we just weren't sure how that would behave. So that's why the automatic update from the WordPress dashboard wasn't available initially for 2.3.0. It is going to be introduced back in shortly, because we've been able to do some testing and make sure that, yes, the user experience is fine. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to 100% be able to have people avoid confusion because we have no control over this situation. The server imposes the limitations of the file size that it allows. So we, we're going to do our best with preemptively informing people of this potential, and we're going to put it in our documentation in terms of how to install MemberMouse, how to upgrade MemberMouse, just make sure all that information is there. So again, it was just a curveball for us because our plugin was below 2 meg prior to 2.3.0, and now it's above 2 megabytes, which is that default limitation that servers in place typically. So that's why that happened for the 2.3.0 release. So hopefully that answers your question.